Hello there, my name is Jeff and welcome. Today's video is a question and answer session on the game Chronicles of Elyria, in which Bicycle Walrus discusses talents with Caspian from Soulbound Studios. Over to you, Mr. Walrus.
Hello and welcome to DM21 Gaming. My name is Bicycle Walrus, and today I am being joined by Mr. Jeromy Walsh, the technical director and CEO of Soulbound Studios, here to talk about his game, Chronicles of Elyria, in a question and answer session. Sir, how are you?
I am doing very well. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. It's quite an honor, and I know we have we got a ton of questions to go through, so I'm just going to hop right on into it, if that's all right with you.
That sounds good.
All right, fantastic. So, Lankic says that, I'm a very selfish person, and I worry that I won't get a talent. And Wyke also asks a bit of an associated question, which is, I want to be a magic user. I've paid my money, so make it so that I can be a magic user. Fix this now! How would you respond to that?
Those are good questions. They're very closely related, and it was something that I thought about before we did the first design journal. I had this question of whether or not I wanted to talk about magic at all from the very beginning, or whether or not I wanted to delay and wait until later. Ultimately, we went ahead and talked about talents early on because we felt like kind of showing our cards early and talking about the features of a soul was the right thing to do. But in retrospect, I kind of wish that we had left that out at that point and had really just approached this game as this is an MMO. It's sword and sorcery style, but magic doesn't exist in this world. It hasn't been seen in thousands of years, and just kind of leave it at that. A lot of people have made a comparison to our game and some other animes like Sword Art Online and Log Horizon, and in Sword Art they've got this concept of sword arts, but there isn't actually magic in the world, or at least not that's seen, and that doesn't happen until later in the show. And while there's really no connection between us and either of those shows, as I was watching that based on other people's recommendation, it struck true. It's like, yeah, this is a combat-based world. It's a world of survival. It's a world where there are important things on the line, and magic doesn't really play a role in this. It doesn't really exist. And so that's kind of the message that we want to deliver with this world, is that if you see people doing magic, it should be feared, and it should be dealt with accordingly. And you're not going to see people wandering around doing magic. You're not going to have a mage in each of your parties. There's not going to be a big influence on the game. And so if I could, I would go back and I would actually reset history and say, listen, there's no magic in this game. And then when it happens and people see magic and it's something that's going on around them and it becomes part of the story, then everybody kind of wondering, well, what do we do now? Like, how do we deal with this? Is this a character mechanic? Is there some way for us to get this? Like, what do we do? And unfortunately, people kind of know in advance that's kind of going to happen. The best thing I can tell people at this point is it's going to be extremely rare to the point where it's almost non-existent. And so we still hope that people won't feel like the fact that some small percentage of people out there can get it and everybody can't, other than that, is going to be a game changer for them. The other thing I can tell you, and this is kind of a foreshadowing, if you will, is that the magic and the existence of magic and kind of how prevalent it is a main part of the storyline. And I'm not saying that magic will ever become commonplace. That would certainly go against what we're trying to achieve in the world. What I can say is that we have intentionally withheld enough about the magic system so that you guys don't have a clear picture yet about how magic works, how common it is, or whether it's something you would even want if you could. So at this point, I'd say just don't worry about it. Wait until we are able to tell you a little bit more about how the magic system works, and you might find that that's less of an issue for you.
So essentially, what you're saying here is that, hey, this is a world of combat, and magic is one of those really unknown things that people in this world don't even really know exists. So if everyone could all of a sudden say, I want to be a mage, which is what Wyke is saying, I've paid money, so let me be a magic user. Well, what you're saying is, your argument is, well, no one's a magic user, except all of a sudden, maybe one day, this happens, and we're kind of foreshadowing to that. But the way that you should look at it is well, no one has magic, correct?
Yeah, I think the way I would respond to that question directly is you actually did pay money, but you paid money to be a champion, an explorer, a producer, a gatherer. You paid money for the experience and to be a part of the story. And if it turns out that your particular character has magic, that should be looked at as icing. It's not actually what you paid for. That comes separate.
Okay, fantastic. We'll move on to the next story question, which is from Alyssal Imagine, or Alyssal Imagine. And her question is, I worry without raids, there won't be any really strong monsters that you need more than one person to defeat. What's your response to that?
I was looking through this list of questions, and I chose to put that one in the story category as opposed to like the content category or something like that, to remind myself how to answer this question, which is, if you've read any of the lore by Inara Starsong, you already know there is belief that the ancients, these anti-Peruvians, have been awakened. And I wouldn't say there aren't going to be any really strong monsters in the world for you to defeat. I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, okay. We're going to move on to fantasy versus realism, which is a rather larger topic. It's one of our larger ones for tonight. Ender asks, I'm worried about the non-realistic elements. I don't like having sorcerers, dragons, vampires, and whatnot running around. Those are exactly the things that can unbalance the game. An overpowered sorcerer, a powerful vampire, an immortal army, etc. And so really what this is kind of getting to is game balance. You know, traditionally in MMORPGs, everybody's balanced. Everybody is the same power level, maybe different roles, but otherwise they have the same power level. And so maybe that's kind of where his concern is coming from, is the traditional sense of MMORPGs.
So I also put the story section right below this fantasy versus realism to remind myself to flow from Alyssal Imagine's question into this one, which she says, I worry without raids that there won't be any really strong monsters that you need that might require more than one person to defeat. And then immediately after that, Ender calls out that there are going to be these overpowered sorcerers, powerful vampires, immortal armies, and that sort of thing, and that those cause a problem with game balance. And actually, Ender's question is my solution to the previous question, which is that we have intentionally introduced the opportunity for players in the world to become overpowered, to become unbalanced. The ability to become a superpowered sorcerer, the ability to become, the most powerful vampire, or the head of an entire coven of vampires, or even, the rumor of there being the ability to become a lich and having, this immortal army, or, necromancy, the ability to raise the dead. Those are not going to be things that are going to sit well with most players. And so the objective here is that when somebody does become the overpowered sorcerer or the powerful vampire, that everybody else who's looking for a raid boss now finds one. And so it's our intention that these unbalances create player content. That's kind of, it's by design.
Okay, and kind of thinking about that, it's in a world where obviously permadeath is a thing, and you have these ultra powerful players. I can immediately see the concern that someone might have is like, well, these ultra powerful players are now taking not only my character's life into their hands, but my pocketbooks. And so, and we know that the Soulbound engine is smart enough to distinguish the difference between a PC and an NPC. Is it smart enough to distinguish the difference between a PC with talents versus a PC without talents? And would the risk be lowered for trying to go after these guys?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question.
So basically, if I'm killed by a PC, the Soulbound engine recognizes that, okay, he was killed by a PC, his spirit loss from spirit walking will be, a certain amount. So I decided to go after them, or they decided to grief me because they're overpowered. Because you're introducing an overpowered player who now can take my book and my experience into their hands. Is there a way to kind of balance out the penalties from being, I guess, murdered by these people?
So obviously there's a lot of areas in here where we're not going to know. Generally, anytime we approach a problem, we know, okay, there's a sweet spot here. There's going to be a place where things feel too overpowered, and that these overpowered players really become so overpowered there's nothing anybody can do about it. And on the other end, there is these players who become overpowered so little that nobody really notices that they even exist, and that they have power, but it's useless by and large, and it's not creating the story that we want to. It's not creating conflict. Anytime we look at one of those and we know that there's dials that we need to tweak and figure it out, we kind of look to play test to solve those problems. We want to get players into the world in alpha and in beta and have these vampires and sorcerers running around so that we can really see what it takes for them to incite a revolt. How powerful does a vampire have to be before the village rises up with pitchforks and attacks them? On the other hand, we want to find out, if we make the vampire that powerful, what's the real cost to the community? As it stands now, there's no checks and balances in place because it's pretty early on. But again, we want the powerful vampires and the overpowered sorcerers to make people want to attack them. And if they are this super powerful vampire that's living quietly in their castle on the edge of the village, not really doing anything, then we're kind of failing from story writer perspective, because we've introduced something that should cause story that's not. And so we need to make them overpowered enough so that it creates the opportunity for story.
Got it. Okay. Moving on to the next question. Gunholio is basically asking, it's a very long question, but I'm going to kind of summarize it here.
Will vampires sparkle?
Yes, vampires, do they sparkle? Are you drawing inspiration from Twilight for vampires?
No, vampires don't sparkle. We mentioned before that you won't actually be able to tell easily whether or not somebody is a vampire, because if you've got this very powerful vampire who's doing very bad things and everybody wants to rise up and find them, part of the story is detecting who it is. It's a game of murder mystery. And so if they sparkled in the daylight, that would be a little bit easy. What I can say is that the next design journal, we talk a little bit about anonymity as part of our discussion on identities and disguises and reputation. And one of the things we talk about is how you could throw on a cloak. And when you throw on a cloak, even if you recognize someone previously, even if you know who they are by sight, and they do have that little name tag over their heads because you've encountered them enough that you want to be able to spot them in a crowd. If somebody throws the cloak over their head, they're not going to be spottable out in daylight or even at night. You're not going to know who they are. And that same cloak can be used by vampires to allow them to move about between buildings during daytime. So you'll probably look suspicious at someone if it's middle of the day and they're walking around in a cloak. And if you're a sheriff or somebody who has the legal reason to do so, you might want to go up and have a conversation with them. But in general, vampires are very powerful, and they only get more powerful as time goes on. And they are strong. I'm looking at the conversation here. They are strong, fast, and they are powerful. So yeah, people who become vampires, they do burn in daylight. There is a dot that hits them in daylight if they are disrobed, or if their cloak is removed from them, or if they are other ways engage in combat, and they cannot use their abilities during the daytime where the dot starts as well. So as far as we know at this point, daylight and one other way are the only two ways to defeat a vampire.
Okay, real quick, for those who are uninitiated, dots means damage over time. So it's like you're poisoned in the daylight.
Oh, come on, I'm hoping the audience knows that.
Just in case. You never know who's listening.
You never know. That's true.
We are literally at the bottom of page 2 of 5 pages. But I think that it would be wise that maybe we go ahead and touch on these in a next, part 2 session.
I really do appreciate having me on the show and us answering these, because these were important enough that I felt like we needed to answer these questions in person, and that just typing the answers out on the forums didn't do the questions justice. I think these were well thought out. They were well worded. They're serious concerns, and there are things that need to be addressed. So I felt like doing them in a voice format was great, and I'm glad that you were willing to step forward and let me do that. I think for the time being, since we don't have this list answered yet, we should plan to do it whether or not it's next week or if it's before then, to make sure that we can get these kind of all answered sooner rather than later. I think I'll leave that up to you. Personal note to the community, thank you guys for those of you who are following along. Thank you for those who are taking time to provide your concerns for us so that we know what people are thinking. Obviously, it's difficult from a developer standpoint when we are listening to the community to know kind of what the temperature is. We want to make sure that people like what we're doing. But at the same time, we have to take some of it with a grain of salt. And when people spend the time to, really eloquently express their concerns like this, it makes our job easy, because then we know, the community cares about the game. That is the thing that's most important to us, is that we're super impressed with how much the community has responded to the game and how much they care about what we're doing. So yeah, just thank you to the community. Keep supporting us, and we will continue to try and make the game that we want to make, which we believe thus far is also the game you want us to make.
You guys so much for watching. This has been a great opportunity to have Caspian here. Caspian, thank you so much for coming by to the channel. It was quite an honor having you, and I think we learned an awful lot about this, about your title, Chronicles of Elyria. I myself am very excited for it to come out, and thank you very much for the opportunity for us to actually distribute that information, and it was an absolute honor having you.
My pleasure.
All right, fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for watching. This was Bicycle Walrus with Caspian, otherwise known as Jeromy Walsh. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching this video. Please take the time to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more videos from Not In Game. In the meantime, you can click here to see the original video that this video was based on, or click here for Chronicles of Elyria, or here for DM21 Gaming. And so, until we meet again, I wish you all adieu. Goodbye.